Marriage can be one of the most murkiest things you could ever encounter. Like if you don't have set standards, if you don't have set boundaries and things, it can get really complicated. So tonight we're going to talk about it. Boundaries in marriage. Let's get it. Thanks for joining us on That Christian Fam. If growing in the faith is important to you, hit that subscribe button, because over here we encourage, empower, and give you everyday practical Christian advice on everyday situations. We drop videos every Tuesday and Friday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. So while you're at it, hit that notification bell, because for the first hour, we respond to comments immediately. Boundaries in marriage. Well, in order to establish boundaries, you first have to understand the importance of having boundaries in the marriage, right? So what I like to think about is traffic lanes. Like if you're in one lane and the car is in the other lane, like it's set up that way for a reason, so y'all don't bump into each other, right? Could you imagine driving down the street or a busy freeway where there's no like dotted line to separate the different lanes? Like it would be chaos. Everybody will be bumping into each other because why? It will be murky, right? Well, that's the same thing in marriage. If you don't set up boundaries and standards in a marriage, it's gonna get murky real quick. Let's deal with the work situation. Like when you take lunch, don't take lunches with the opposite sex without your spouse knowing. And there's so many reasons why you shouldn't do it. For one, it don't look good. Number two is it takes but a moment for somebody to slip up. Let me give you a real life example. Say for instance, the previous night, you get into an argument with your spouse and you leave for work the next day, and then you happen to go out to lunch with one of your friends of the opposite sex, and then temptation enters your mind or enters their mind. Look, let me tell you something. Don't act like you Teflon Don or Teflon Tina out there. You know good and well that all of us are susceptible to falling into temptation. Don't go to lunch with people of the opposite sex without your spouse knowing, because it gives a foothold to the enemy, and anything can happen at any given time. If you have to work late at the office, try your best not to work late with someone of the opposite sex. Now listen, anything can happen at any given time, like we just talked about it, but things can really happen when it's late at night and y'all the only ones in the office. Say for instance, someone of the opposite sex at work gives you a gift. You know what you do with that gift? You can take the gift, that's all right. But then when they ask about it the next day, say for instance, they gave you a watch or something, I'll be looking at that watch like, they ask, hey, how you like the watch? I'll be like, you know what? This is really nice. Nikki thinks it looks really good. Y'all see what I did? Y'all see what I did? I just fit that right. I just real slick with it. Just slipped it right on in. That's exactly how you do it. You ain't got to be rude. You ain't got to be forceful. You ain't got to be mean or nothing like that. All you have to do is slip it in to let them know, hey, listen, I'm married, and you remind yourself, I'm married. I want to challenge y'all to read Ephesians 5, not just part of the chapter, but the entire chapter. In there, you're going to see where it talks about wives submitting to their own husbands and husbands loving their own wives and things like that. You're going to find a whole bunch of stuff up in there. But one thing you ain't going to find is where it mentions having a work wife or work husband. Like there's no mention of having a wife at home and a wife at work, a husband at home and a husband at work. Don't play them little silly games, because what can happen is you can get those lines blurred because you're calling something that is not as though it was. Don't try to get spiritual with me. This ain't one of them situations where you call those things that be not as though they were. Do not call someone your husband who ain't your husband, your husband. Do not call somebody your wife who ain't your wife, your wife. Your wife is your wife. Your co-workers are your co-workers. Just stop it. Like stop it. Let's talk about church ministry, cause you even gotta watch out for this in church ministry. Let's take something as simple as prayer. I have seen people of the opposite sex go to someone of the opposite sex every single time it's time for prayer. Like when they say who needs special prayer and all this other stuff, and they don't go up front or they don't go out into the aisle and get prayer unless it's a specific person of the opposite sex that can pray for them. I've seen it too many times. There will be women looking for men to pray for them. There will be men looking for women to pray for them, and it's the same person every single time, and they know that person is married. That's a trap right there. Let me tell you something. Last I checked, any believer can talk to God. Their prayer can reach heaven just like your favorite person can. Don't fall into that trap. Another thing you want to watch out for is when you have to meet with someone at church of the opposite sex in a room, leave the door open. Be like, yo, listen, no, keep that door open. No, not that door. That door right there, the one close right here, the one right here to this room. Yeah, Leave that open. That's a way of you protecting them and you protecting yourself and not leaving any room for the enemy to enter and not giving room for anybody to say that anything happened that was inappropriate, because you don't want to get caught up in some he said, she said, and you want to make sure you leave that door open so there can be no misunderstanding and say, well, such and such did this. No, the door was wide open. That's a way of honoring your marriage and keeping you free from some headaches. When it comes to social media, like, look, we got this YouTube channel right here, and I will be quick to let Nikki know, hey, listen, if somebody reaches out to me, I don't care if they from California, Philadelphia, Florida, Puerto Rico, wherever, if they reach out to me and there's someone of the opposite sex, I'm gonna let her know straight up, hey, listen, such, hit me up, I want you to see this, that, and the other, so she can be in the loop of what's going on. And then if we can, Nikki will actually be the one that actually communicates with that person of the opposite sex and not me, or not me alone. Or if so, both of us are in communication and both of us are aware of the situation. That way you keep your nose clean and you don't get caught up in no foolishness. Again, we talking about boundaries. If this video is adding any value to your life at all, please smash that like button. Let's talk about family, late night phone calls and stuff. Now listen, I know you and your brother might be close, and I know you and your sister, y'all might be close, but they don't need to be calling you, especially since you done got married. And this is really a big problem for those who are recently married. Like, your siblings don't understand that this is off switch. Like, after a certain time of night, they don't need to be calling you. You are no longer a single man or woman. They don't need to be calling your house at midnight all the time talking about, hey, what's up? Let's just chat it up. No, listen, honor the marriage. There's a reason why you got married, so you can be together with your spouse. And you have to make your siblings aware of this. Like, hey, listen, this ain't how it was when we were single. We gonna have to set some boundaries in place, because listen, if your marriage or your life is anything like me and Nikki's, we got 3 kids, all right? So our time to ourselves is golden. So we have to split our time up between our 3 kids and, doing our YouTube channel ministry, which is awesome, and, working our full-time jobs and, being parents and things like that. So at the end of the day, if we have any time left to ourselves, that's great. And we don't want to divide that up with anybody else. So again, you have to set those boundaries just out of respect for your marriage. When it comes to the bedroom life, now look, I shouldn't have to say too much here, but you should not be sharing things that go down in your bedroom with people. Like, you shouldn't do that. Now, there may be some situations where you might have to share something with like a really close friend. If there's like an issue or something, you just want some advice on something, I think that's fine. But to just be willy-nilly talking about, well, they like this, that, no, you don't need to be talking about that. Like, again, you need to honor the sanctity of your marriage and honor your spouse. When it comes to disagreements, don't be so quick to share that you and your spouse have had a disagreement. Like, don't be running to your mama talking about, well, such and such, Tyrone did this or Keisha did that, this, that, and the other. Don't be going to your brothers and your sisters talking about how you and them had a disagreement, because what happens is, let me tell you something, they don't love your spouse like you love your spouse, all right? And so what happens is, you and your spouse, y'all can work it out and make up and this, that, and the other, but they have not forgiven your spouse. And what you've done is you've caused a wedge between your family and them. And that thing sometimes takes years and years to repair. The main thing we're trying to prevent is allowing someone to have too much influence or too much of a voice in our marriage, because if that happens, then you can't hear the main voice that you need to hear, which is your spouse's. So if you have not sat down with your spouse and established some boundaries, y'all need to real quick, because that's the quickest way, or one of the quickest ways, to destroy your marriage before it even gets started. Thanks for watching. The next video, we're going to be talking about boundaries for singles. I hope I helped somebody on the other side of this video. If you're offended, I really don't care. And I got a whole video entitled Why I Don't Care down in the description. Check out the videos on the screen. This is Jermaine from That Christian Fam, aka The King's Realm, where we shape our worldview around God's reality. I'm out.
Let me vent now, bam, my song when I pin now.